Gardeners that enjoy cooking know that herbs harvested fresh from the garden have a lot more flavor than anything you can buy at the supermarket. For that reason, a lot of us have a patch of herbs somewhere in our garden. Well, just because the season is coming to a close, fall is upon us, and winter is not too far away, this doesn't mean that we have to stop using fresh herbs while we're cooking. Now, sometimes you can go to the nurseries or garden centers and they'll have small herbs for sale still yet this time of the year. You can purchase those, pot them up, and grow those indoors during the winter and harvest off of them. Or if you have herbs outdoors, you could just go out into your garden before a frost and just dig up some of the herbs and bring them inside for growing. Well, that's what I'm going to do today. I'm out here in our new herb garden. We've got an oregano plant here that I'm going to dig and pot up. Now, when you're choosing plants to bring inside, choose those that are healthy or robust, or at least those that you can fit into a pot pretty easy. So I'm just going to take my shovel here and get a root ball, good sized root ball on this oregano. I'll try not to break up that root ball too much anyway. We'll just kind of loosen it up here. And hopefully you have your herbs planted in a well-drained location, some good well-drained soil to work with, and not a lot of clay that you have to try to get into a container. Of course, if you do have your herbs planted in a clay soil, they may not be that healthy because our herbs do need good drainage, and a good well-drained soil out in full sun is the best place to grow herbs. Well, I'm just going to pop this out of the ground here right now with our shovel. And a pretty good sized root ball on it here. And I'm going to actually loosen this root ball a little bit, kind of get rid of some of that extra soil around the edges. We've got some good organic matter in our soil here, gives us good drainage. You can see that we've mulched the top of our soil with this gravel, this little grit, kind of help protect the crown of the plant, keep the soil from splashing up onto it somewhat. So now that I've got the root ball kind of down to the size I want, I'm going to put it in my pot here. And typically we would use a pot that is taller rather than a short pot, because tall pots do drain a little bit better. So we'll fit our oregano down in the pot there, and actually it looks like it's still a little bit large. I'm going to take off just a little bit more soil around the edge. Now, you don't want to fill up your container with the garden soil because it's not going to drain that well. You want to be able to get in at least an inch or two of fresh greenhouse type media or soil mix around the plant. That way we can get some good drainage on this plant while we have it in the pot. So I've sized it down just a little bit more. I'm going to put a little bit more of our media in the pot. This is a soil mix with peat moss, perlite, maybe a little bit of vermiculite there. Got that in the bottom of the pot. Now we've got some room to put some soil around the edges of the plant. Again, you don't want to pack in the garden soil around your herbs because that would just cut down the drainage way too much. Plus, having some fresh potting mix will also be a good media for those roots that we just damaged to grow into. So we'll work in lots of this potting mix around our oregano here, and it'll be ready for watering in. Now, after we get all of our herbs potted up that we want to bring inside, we need to treat them kind of like we would our house plants that have been outside during the growing season. We want to acclimate them to the lower light levels indoors. So for about a week, we need to move this to somewhere out of direct sunlight, maybe up on the porch or under the shade of a tree. Let it get used to those low light levels before we bring it inside. Now, if you've got the plant out on your porch and the weatherman calls for a freeze or a hard frost that night, you can shuttle it indoors and then bring it back out the next day. Well, I'm going to water this one in here because we have done a little bit of stress to the plant, cut several of those roots, but should recover quite nicely. One last thing to remember before you bring your herbs indoors is to look them over really well to make sure they don't have any insects. Now, lift up the leaves and the branches and look for any spider mites, aphids, mealybugs, anything like that. And if you do find anything, you can treat them with something safe, like this insect-killing insecticidal soap. Just douse it with that really good. Should take care of those problems. Now, once you bring your herbs indoors, they need to be placed somewhere where they get about 5 hours of direct sunlight per day. Now, if you put them up in a window, you don't want the leaves or the stems to be touching the cold glass in the cold part of the year. And also, it's a good idea to come by every few days and just sort of rotate the plant. That way, all parts of the plant will get equal amounts of sunlight. Now, probably the best thing you can do to give your herbs light is to hook up some sort of shop light or fluorescent light fixture like this. We've got some chains and some S-hooks attached to the light fixture here. You can just attach that, position it about 6 inches above your herbs, and leave the light on for about 14 hours a day. And that will really help your herbs perform well indoors, give them lots of light. When you bring your herbs indoors, you'll want to position them where they get a little bit of air movement between the plants. They don't want to be too crowded or too close together where they're all touching each other or anything like that. You also don't want to put them where they can get some cold drafts from doors or windows that are opened often. And also, indoors, the herbs will need a little extra humidity, and you can achieve that with some sort of tray with gravel like we've got right here, and just put some water in that gravel, and that will provide that humidity that the plants need. Now, we don't want to keep this full of water so much that the pots are actually sitting in a wet situation and wicking the water up and keeping the soil in there too wet. So don't put that much water in the tray of gravel. Now, a round pot dish like this one full of gravel may be a little bit hard to fit on a windowsill. So another option you might try would be to do something like this. These are just some flats or flat trays. And I've got 3 of them together, so we've kind of tripled it up here to make it a little bit stronger to carry around. But something like this might fit on a windowsill a little bit better than the big round tray. Now, the #1 way to kill your herbs indoors over the winter is to overwater them. So make sure they dry out well before you water them again. And for those that we've dug up from outdoors and brought inside, we've got 2 different types of media. We've got this greenhouse media that's going to dry out a little quicker than the soil that came from the garden. So you might get in the habit of, when you check for water, maybe just kind of with your fingers just kind of get down in there and make sure the soil ball that was growing outside is not still wet before you add any water to those herbs. Now, if you want to fertilize your herbs indoors during the winter, you can use some organic type fertilizers like fish emulsion, like we've got right here. This is like 5% nitrogen. If you want to go the organic route, use an organic type fertilizer. But we've got fish emulsion. You could also use something like seaweed extract, another organic type fertilizer. This is very low in nitrogen, it's like 0.1%. Or you could maybe have the best of both worlds and go with something like this. It's a combination of the fish emulsion and the seaweed extract for that organic fertilizer. Well, I hope you try this at home and you have fresh herbs to cook with throughout the winter.